Derneği'nin değerli paydaşları.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, dear stakeholders of the Ethics and Reputation Society, welcome back to day 3 of the 8th Ethics Summit. In the occasion of the 8th Summit, we'd like to thank you very much for being with us. The 8th of the series of the congresses that we've been organizing for the last 7 years is being held online due to the pandemic. On the third day, we will be discussing under the theme, You're as strong as your weakest link. Are you aware of your third-party related ethics and compliance risks? I'd like to give the floor to our Executive Board member, Mr. Fikret Sebilcioğlu. Thank you very much. Firstly, hello and welcome. I'm extremely happy to be with you on the occasion of the third day of our summit. Today, we will be speaking about ethics and compliance. In particular, we'll be speaking about third-party related risks. Third-party related risks is the direct translation of the Anglo-Saxon terminology. Sometimes our business partners or the third parties are the term we rather use in this occasion. And in this activity, we will be speaking about third parties. Who are the third parties? Briefly, I would like to cover them. Within 10 minutes, I'd like to make an introduction about the third party, and then the rest of our speakers will be covering the other details of third-party related risks. To put it in the simplest term, third party are those who will be those involved in sales and procurement chain in the delivery of services or goods to the end users. I mean, everyone, all the business partners, all the ones that we've been working with in our chain of suppliers, lawyers, and all the contractors, distributors, dealers. These are all the members of the universe of third parties. Well, then, what is the third party related risk? If we are speaking about such risks, we are, of course, speaking it at the end of the point that capitalism has reached, and, of course, globalization, because with globalization, companies have started being involved in the overseas trade. Quite naturally, they don't know these geographies, they can't speak their languages, and quite naturally, they are working with local companies there who are the third parties, which is quite legitimate. Indeed, there are quite positive aspects and opportunities of this for international companies. As a result of this, and as a result of globalization and the third party network being enlarged, we're speaking about a way of working. However, quite naturally, this brings along with some as a sister risk, the third party related risks. What are the risks? Actually, there is a broader universe of risks, such as lack of supply of goods and services, matters related to environment, to labor health, or data security. But today we're speaking about ethics and compliance, and therefore we will be covering ethics and compliance risks due to third parties, such as abuse, such as bribery, such as corruption. We'll be speaking about these risks. To make a distinction, there are two aspects, two dimensions per se of this, because under normal conditions, when we say third-party related risks, we are speaking about anyone who is acting on our behalf out of our knowledge, and in case of such as corruption, which is out of our knowledge, we are speaking about such third-party related risks. But everything evolved into the aspect that the third parties are always involved. It's not only because the risk is due to them, it's also because they're involved in it. There is a victim company, let's say, and the employees there are making some, well-known but hidden business affairs, and with third
Bizim sıklıkla
parties,
karşılaştığımız
and
üçüncü
these
taraf
will
riskleri
come up
olarak
as the
karşımıza çıkıyor.
third-party
Biz
risks,
bu
and
iki
these are the
tür
two types of
üçüncü
third-party
taraf
risks
riskleri de
that we will
esasında
be
kapsamımız içine
discussing
alıyoruz.
today
Peki
in our debate as
neden
well.
üçüncü taraf
But why
risklerini
are we
konuşuyoruz?
speaking
Neden
about the
önemli?
third-party related risks? Why would
Onun
it
nedeni
matter?
de şu,
It matters
suistimal
because
dünyasına baktığımızda, yani
within
çalışanların yaptığı
the
suistimallere
world of
baktığımızda
abuse,
sıklıkla
particularly
karşılaştığımız
by employees,
bir tür
we
olan
are
ve
speaking
tespiti
about this
en zor
kind
olan
of
suistimal türü yolsuzluk.
corruption, which is
İkinci
really very
taraflar
difficult
dediğimiz
to
zaman da
detect. So
esasında
when we're speaking
çalışan
about
suistimalleri
a
perspektifinden baktığımızda
third
yolsuzlukla üçüncü
party
taraflar beraber geliyor.
abuse,
Esasında
and
kısaca şöyle
also
söyleyebiliriz.
here
Bir
comes
şirkette yolsuzluk
the
yapılabilmesi için
third
üçüncü tarafa
parties.
ihtiyaç var.
And for such kind of
Doğal olarak yolsuzluğun olduğu her
exploitations
yerde
to take
üçüncü
place, of
taraflarla
course, you need
böyle
the
bir
third parties,
ilişkinin
because
olduğunu
naturally we are speaking
görüyoruz.
about such link of relations with the third
Ve
parties. And
yolsuzluk
when it comes to
konularında da
corruption
yolsuzluk eylemlerinde
and
de en fazla
corruption
üçüncü tarafı aracı
acts,
olarak bir
the
kanal
third
olarak
parties are
kullanılıyor.
being
Hangi
used
konuda
as a
kanal olarak
channel. Channel
kullanılıyor?
to what?
Rüşvetin
Channel
dışarıya
to
çıkarılması, dışarıya
bridging,
çıkarıldıktan sonra
a
rüşvetin geri
bribe
verilmesi veya
outside,
bunun başka
or maybe
yöntemlerle
sometimes we're speaking about use
kullanılması.
of the bribery through other means.
Bu girişten
Now,
sonra
after
şunu
this brief
söyleyebilirsiniz.
introduction, you may
Peki
ask me,
tamam
well,
da bu risk
why
neden bu
would
kadar
that
önemli olsun
risk
ki bu
be
coğrafyada
so
veya
important
küresel
globally
olarak?
or
Size
locally?
bazı
Let
bilgiler
me
vereceğim.
share
Belki
with you
bu bilgiler
some
neticesinde
data,
esasında somut
concrete
bilgiler ve
data
araştırmalar
from
sonucunda
studies.
üçüncü
Maybe
tarafların
at the
esasında
end you
bizim
would
için ne kadar
understand how
kritik
critical
bir
a risk the
risk olduğu
third-party
konusunda
risk
fikrinizi
is.
belirtebilir. Öncelikle
Now,
içinde
within
bulunduğumuz
this
coğrafya
geography,
Türkiye,
Turkey,
Uluslararası Şeffaflık
according
Örgütü'nün
to the
yapmış olduğu
international
son yolsuzluk kaygı
transparency,
endeksinde Türkiye
among
180 ülkede
180
86. sırada.
countries listed,
Yani son sırada
Turkey
Somali,
ranks
birinci
86th.
sırada Yeni
The
Zelanda ve
last is
Danimarka'nın
Somali,
olduğu
and
bir
number one is New
yatırım
Zealand,
içinde
and we are
86. sıradayız.
ranking
Yani oldukça kötü.
86th, which is quite
Daha da
poor.
tatsız bir
To
şey
make
söyleyeyim.
things
Türkiye son
bitter, in the
8
last
yılda
8 years,
en fazla
Turkey
yolsuzluk algısı
has been
kötüleşen
amongst
5
the
ülkeden birisi.
5 countries
Kısaca
out of which
Türkiye
corruption perception has
belki de
weakened the
birçok
most.
yabancı ülke ve
So
yabancı şirket
maybe
tarafından
Turkey is being
yüksek risk
considered
görülen
as
bir
a
ülke haline
high-risk
geldi yolsuzluk
country in
algısı
terms of
yönünden.
the risk of or the
Bir diğer
perception of
araştırmada Akfen'in yapmış olduğu
corruption. Another
çalışma, o
study by
çalışmada
Axel
bizim içinde bulunduğumuz
indicates that
bölgede
within our region,
yolsuzluk
the corruption
oranının
ratio
dünyada en
is
yüksek ikinci
highest.
bölge
So
olduğunu
we are
gösteriyor.
ranking the second
Bir başka
region
açıdan bakalım.
globally in this
Sektörel
kind
olarak
of a risk.
baktığımızda da
Sectorally, we're
bütün sektörlere
listing all the
baktığımızda, yani
sectors,
Akfen'in
and I'm
raporundan
saying
bunu
this from
söyleyeyim.
the
Yani
report of
inşaat olabilir, enerji olabilir,
construction,
perakende
energy,
olabilir.
retail
Hepsinde
business.
vakaların
About
%50
50%
civarında
of the
vakada
cases
%50 civarında yolsuzluk ortaya
are
çıkmış.
also
Yani
represented
sektörlerin
with
çoğunda
corruption.
yolsuzluk çok
So
yüksek.
corruption is quite high
Ve
as
en
an
son konu
incidence in
bence
all
en
sectors.
çarpıcısı. Bildiğiniz üzere
Now, the
dünyada
third one I
özellikle
think is the
Batı
most striking
dünyasında,
one. In the
Amerika'da,
Western
İngiltere'de,
world,
Fransa'da
in the
özellikle çıkan
UK, in
rüşvetle
France,
mücadele
there are
kanunlarında
some
kanunlar çok ciddi
anti-corruption
bir
acts, All these acts indicate
yolsuzluk konusunda
quite
çok ciddi bir
strict
şirketler için risk haline
measures
gelmeye
about
başladı.
corruption. And
FCPA
let
diye bir
me give
yasaya
you
örnek vereceğim.
some
Yani Amerika'daki
example
rüşvetle
from the
mücadele
CPA,
kanunu.
the
Yaklaşık
Anti-Corruption Act in the United States. Since
1970'lerden beri
70s,
300
almost
vaka olmuş
300
ve bu
cases
300 vakanın
took place, and in
289'unda üçüncü taraflar baş
289,
verilmiş. Bence bu
the
bilgiyle
third
üçüncü taraflarla
parties
ilgili yakından
applied.
ilgilenmemize
Therefore,
neden tabii ki
it's
de
maybe
ve
the mere
İtibar Derneği
reason
olarak
why we should be interested
bu
in the third
bilgiler bizi hep
parties.
bu konuda
And I think
savunuculuk faaliyeti
these
yapmaya
data
itiyor.
pushes us into
Peki ne
advocacy
yapmalı?
in this area. But what
Bir
what
riskten
to do?
bahsediyorsak bu riski
I mean,
yönetmekten
we
başka
don't have
çaremiz
any
yok
other
esasında. Değer
choice but
zincirini
strengthening
kuvvetlendirmemiz lazım. Zaten
the
bugünün
value
teması da
chain. And
en
today
zayıf
we will
halkımız
be
kadar
speaking
güçlüyseniz
about the weakest link, and
bu
you're
böyle
as
bir referans
strong
veriyor.
as your
Ne kadar
weakest
bu
link.
zincirimiz
The
güçlü olursa o
stronger
kadar
this link
sağlam
is, the stronger
oluruz. Bunun
you
için de
are.
yapılacak şey
So the thing
esasında
that we should be doing there is, in
özellikle
particular,
Amerika kaynaklı
the practices
uygulamalar
resulting
neticesinde
from
az
the
çok
United
belli.
States dictate
Ve
what to
üçüncü
do.
taraf
I mean, we
evreninin
should be
bilinmesi,
aware of the
risk
third
faktörlerinin bilinmesi,
party
spesifik
domain,
risklerin
and we should
anlaşılması,
be
sektöre özel,
appreciating the
özenli
sector-specific
inceleme
risks.
çalışması, yani bu
We
due
should also
diligence
be
dediğimiz
considering
çalışma
the significance
ve
of due
sözleşme,
diligence, and of
sözleşme
course for
yapıldıktan sonra ve üçüncü
contracting. And
tarafla da
once we
çalışılmaya
start
başlandıktan
with the
sonra
third
üçüncü
parties, I
tarafın
think
izlenmesi
following the
esasında
third
üçüncü taraf
party is
risklerinin
quite
yönetilmesi
critical
adına
in managing
şirketlere
third
çok
party
ciddi
risks,
araçlar
because
sağlıyor.
it brings quite important
Gelelim son
instruments to companies.
sözlerime
I
bu
mean, coming to
bölümde.
my
Neden
last
etik ve
words,
itibar dendiği
why
konuya
would
aslında
the
şu ana
Ethics
kadar
and Reputation
söylediklerimden bizim neden
Society be
ilgilendiğimizi
interested in
dernek olarak
such?
anlamışsınızdır. Ama
I
bence
think
iki
there are
boyuta
two main
dikkatinizi
reasons maybe I
çekmek
have to
durumunda kalacağım.
highlight here.
Bir
Number
tanesi
one is
uluslararası
from the perspective of international companies, we look at it as these international companies come to Turkey, they work with the companies in Turkey, so they have some local risks, but as the Ethics and Reputation Society, we have somehow a more divine purpose, which is for the international companies working with local companies. We are advocating actually the ethical and compliance threshold so that the local companies would be guided in terms of the content in which they would be led. And about the content, I would like to add with some good news. In the last 1 year, the third-party study group conducted some studies. They've almost made the guide ready, and I think it will be soon that it will be available on our network. And it's been quite a lengthy study, but it's been a nice one. And concluding my opening remarks here, hope this is going to be a fruitful day. Thank you very much, Fikret, Sebilcioğlu. And now I will give the floor to Dr. Avanish Potnis, the floor.
My name is Avanish Potnis, and thank you, Ted, for inviting me to keynote address today. I work with Novartis. Novartis is the leading pharma company in Turkey. We are the largest exporters, the largest investors in clinical research. We are the largest pharma operations as such in manufacturing as well. Now, of course, we are here for the last 60 years. So while we are a global company, we can also say that we are a local company because we have really lived through the development of pharma industry in Turkey. In fact, the most important and dear and near topic to my heart is the ethical standards in pharma industry. And you know that, it's because we are dealing with the patients, we are dealing with the medical field. Trust is the most important capital that we have in this business. And the trust comes from our ethical standards, our values, our behaviors, and our connections with the patients. In managing our ethical standards, we have recently made a significant move or a shift. We have moved from a rule-based ethical management to a principle-based ethical management. It's in a way to rather live up to our expectation and our philosophy of being unbossed. It's unbossed because we are transferring the responsibility of being ethical and being risk-free to the employees. Our ethical risk management doesn't sit on an island separately in the organization. It becomes a part and parcel of our conducting the business or living the business. As we actually go through our day-to-day operations, ethical conduct is part and parcel of our ethos. One of the most important factors in our ethical management is managing the third parties. Now, you may ask me, why do we need third parties? You are such a global company. You can actually operate by yourself in the business that you know for sure and for long. But here it is, our main objective is to bring this customer satisfaction, the patient outcome. And that we can do it by bringing 4 Ps to our customers or to our patients. Product, place, price, and promotion. These are the age-old practices of business practice, business promotion anyway. Now, we are the best product manufacturers. I can say that with 200 years of experience that Novartis has. But at the same time, when it comes to place, which is distribution and promotion, of course, we need a help. The whole objective is to bring best of those service providers with us as partners and provide the best of the satisfaction of customer satisfaction. Now, we can't be claiming that we are expert in everything. So the whole objective is to get the best of the best from this service universe that we have. Now, I can tell you that, the scale of this operation is quite huge. In Turkey alone, Novartis Pharma has over 3,000 third parties. So obviously, you can understand the complexity of managing the service industry with us, at the same time managing or really delivering customer satisfaction. People ask me about this, that do we really have to manage the risks with third parties? They would know when you are a global company, you must be having some standards when selecting a third party. Once you select a third party, then why do you require a risk management process as such? Now here it is. As I said before, we are a global company. We are present in over 100 countries. And when we are dealing with such huge complexity, of course, there is a human intervention. You can put in any process, no doubt about it, but then humans are one who are actually dealing with these processes. And we can't expect that everybody would be perfect at every time. And of course, everybody is on a different stage of a learning curve. And therefore, we need to actually have some kind of a process to ourselves. Now, risk management is not managing the risk after the risk happens. It's basically being proactive, being appropriate or proportionate, and being robust, identifying the risk coming even before it happens. Now, there are different kind of risks where you have to really be cognizant and be very visionary, I would say, or being vigilant. See, reputational risk, for example. Once you lose the reputation, it's a one-way ticket. You can't get it back. And therefore, risk management or proactive risk management becomes a very important integral part of our customer satisfaction. Now, managing the risk at a global scale, has to really put into the frame, and therefore there is a process. What we do is basically we have our best practice sharing, training, and all that, and we put this whole thing together into a sort of a framework. Now, there are 5 principles through which we manage the risk globally. The first principle, manage the risk at acceptable level. Now, when I say acceptable level, as I said before, we have to manage the risk before it happens. So it has to be proportionate, it has to be robust, and it has to be proactively managed. As I said before, that sometimes the risks happen, it's very difficult to come back and manage your reputation or manage even some legal proceedings out of it. Therefore, managing risk at an acceptable level is a very important principle. The second important principle is that the business owns the risk, and business owns the responsibility of risk management as well. Now, why I say this? See, if risk management becomes a sort of a function by itself and being separately managed, then it's basically business versus risk management, or business versus ethical standards. No, actually, it has to be the business has to understand, the business operation has to understand that risk management and ethical standards is part and parcel of conducting the business. It becomes our way of life. It is nothing different than our way of life. And therefore, the risk management as such or risk control as such is not managed by a function sitting in the corner of the organization. It's actually part and parcel of our organization. The third one, that there has to be a framework, as I said before. Now, in Novartis, we have TP, or third-party, framework. This third-party framework, is actually a sort of a set of processes. And what we do is that every single third party who actually contracts with us has to fit into this framework. So it cannot be that we fit our framework into the third party's expectation. It has to be the third party fitting into the framework. Fourth and most important thing, contracting. See, many times it happens that some of the third parties are not willing to contract with us for their own compulsions. Now, it's very simple that if there is no ethical standard or there is no ethical understanding or if there is no ethical risk management, there is no contracting. We don't contract with that third party. I can give you an example here. Recently, we were approached by a service provider who was organizing a congress, a medical congress. There were a large number of doctors actually attending this congress. Now, obviously, they don't manage this congress, so they asked a service provider to rather manage this congress. The service provider came to us because we were the sponsors of the congress, and we started having the contractual discussions with them. One of our conditions was that if you contract with us as a third party, we need to audit you. We need to actually see, at least for the process that you are contracting with us, at least for this congress that you are actually contracting with us, we need to know that everything that you do through the process and through the contract is ethical. This third party refused to actually give us a right to audit them. Obviously, we could not accept them as a third party. Of course, we were caught between the event organizers and the third party. But finally, we have to convince the event organizers that we have some ethical standards. And it's good for the third party also to abide to those ethical standards. Because tomorrow, if they have a similar challenge from another multinational company, they know exactly what to do. So this is how the contracting works. And last but not the least is, again, I said, that there has to be some kind of ethical, way of, training them or helping them in order to raise their own ethical standards, the third party's own ethical standards in the country. Now, of course, we do that, by bringing them lots of learning from other countries, lots of examples, how this could be done also. This is one way of contributing to ethical standards or raising the ethical standards in a country. And we do that actively in Turkey. So let me tell you actually how do we help, in Turkey. We are part of TEID. We are also part of the association, which is the research-based companies here, the pharma companies. And all of these companies have their own ethical standards, their own ethical framework. We try to make one concoction out of it and help the third parties to understand what a global standard means. This actually helps all of us in order to finally deliver the best of the customer satisfaction. Please, understand what I'm trying to say. We are all doing this in order to provide quality, consistency, and the best of the customer satisfaction, for which we need trust of our employees, we need our trust of our shareholders, we need trust of our patients or our customers. And all that could be achieved only when you have a proper framework and you have proper standards and the processes that you work. If you're a global company, you have to have that. But at the same time, I'm very thankful to all the third parties that we deal with, that they are one of the best partners so far, and they are the partners with us in order to provide the best of the services that so far we have been providing in Turkey and globally. Before I close, let me thank TEID, to bring me in, face to face with you. It is such an amazing opportunity. We are here for last 60 years, as I would say, and we will be here for more than 60 years in the future. So we are always partners. First of all, also thank you to all of you to listening to me. I don't see you face to face. In a virtual world, it's difficult to imagine that you are sitting in front of me and I'm sitting in front of you. But that's the way of life for another year or so, I would say. So all the best and have a great Congress.
Thank you very much, Dr. Potnis. And it will be the time for the video interview of Mr. Tugay Keskin, Chief Operating Officer of Coca-Cola Beverage Operations. Our guest today is Mr. Tugay Keskin, Director of Operations in Coca-Cola Beverages. Firstly, welcome and thank you very much for admitting our invitation. The first question is quite a general one. Please tell us more about yourself, company, and the operations you're in charge of. Firstly, thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's been an honor to me to be a part part of your summit. Speaking of myself, of course, I was born in Izmir in 1968. After getting graduated from University of Ankara, Faculty of Politics, I joined the family of Coca-Cola beverages later, like in 1993. And since then, I've been assuming different responsibilities and roles in the company. Currently, I'm the Director of Operations. Now, I would like to briefly speak about Coca-Cola beverages. Firstly, it was founded in Turkey, but now it's been covering 10 different countries in 26 factories. 8,500 employees are active. Listing down the countries: Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Tajikistan, plus Turkey. And of course, within the system of Coca-Cola beverages and other similar structures are defined as bottlers. Now, the 6th largest bottling operation is conducted here. Within our geography, of course, there are very important set of potential values. Actually, we are a part of a big ecosystem, and within this ecosystem, there are 10 different countries, including more than 1 million customers. Maybe every week, 80% of them are being visited face-to-face, representing the brand, which is important because within the system of Coca-Cola, and as you know, it's been distributed to all geographies. Similar bottling operations are there. In our geography, we have almost 400 million of a population, which is also a very young population. Economically, maybe per capita income, it might not be that bright a geography, but future-wise, I think thanks to this young population, we will be functioning in a bright geography. Of course, the sector that we're in, we have the vision of being the best in this sector in all aspects, in terms of customers and consumers, stakeholders, society, our people and employees. I think our aim is to be defined as the best. And we have the common perspective. I mean, our main goal, I have to say that as for the main goal for the joint umbrella, we are sharing with all the customers, our people, our society, which we have as adding value to the society and everything that we live around, and we are there to put extra value. And of course, achieving this vision, we are basing ourselves in very fundamental values coming from our DNA, our roots, our identity, which are passion, and we do with love whatever we do, and we advocate our brand with love. We present our brand to our consumers with love. We are in teamwork, and we believe in teamwork. No one can do it alone, and we know the importance of doing it as a team. And maybe on the fundamentals of these values, there are two main values that we consider as foundation. Number one, accountability, and the other one is integrity. Now we're basing ourselves in these two fundamental values, whether we do in our vision, and this can also be summarized in a nutshell. Thank you for the fantastic introduction, popping up tens of questions in my mind. Maybe the next question will be based on two different parts of the questions that come to my mind. Number one is, let's just remember, today we are speaking about third-party ethics and compliance risks. And taking a look at FCPA, the Compliance Act of the United States, almost 300 investigations are conducted. 90% almost is involving third parties. Any act against the law would involve the fact that the companies are using third parties as a bridge. So speaking of third party, we are speaking about ethical compliance. So I'd like to go on with two questions. Number one, what is your perspective about compliance and as Coca-Cola beverage, and what is your practice there? But you said before that, you said that you're doing everything with love, marketing, our approach with people. Do you have love into the ethical compliance as well? Love is there whatever we do. So one of the fundamentals is also there. And I also have to say, yes, I mean, not maybe only the values, but we all have the jargon. We just keep saying bringing the bar higher. And we are, of course, the leader in the market, but we want to be the role model, to be a responsible corporate citizen in the society. I have to say that we are spending best efforts for that. Maybe it would be up to third parties to decide, but as someone from inside, I can say that being a leader, being a pioneer and advocating it as with love and bringing it maybe to many parties down the scale, I think would be our vision. Of course, ethical compliance, as I said, it is really critical for us to be a responsible corporate citizen, and of course to make sure that sustainability can be achieved or maintained. One of the rules of thumb is to have an effective application of ethical compliance, and we are quite aware of it, and we must do it at all levels. Now that we're working in a corporate structure, maybe I didn't say it, but we are a public company. We are quoted in the Istanbul Stock Exchange and also over the bench markets in the United States, in the Irish market. The Eurobond is just being processed, and of course there we have the executive committee within ourselves. With this committee, we are always working in parallel with the ethics and compliance committee. We are working in a broad geography, including different countries, but the compliance directorate is in charge of all these geographies. Also, there are ends within other geographies. We have the ethics and compliance managers who are working in different geographies. Therefore, for 100% compliance with ethical values in all these valuations, they all are quite aware of their corporate values, corporate responsibilities. But it's not maybe enough because it maybe within the organization, it's just down there in the organizational chart, but going maybe from top to bottom before moving on to third parties, it is quite critical that our people internalize this approach, to support it, and to identify ethical compliance policies. And I know also that there are ethical codes that are being executed in different frameworks. And it's not about sanction, but reputation that we care about. And the brand, we have a motto about the brand. Brand means a commitment. And, the previous president of Coca-Cola says that brand is a commitment. So we're working with this philosophy. We are representatives of a good brand, and it is really important to make sure that it sustains, not a sanction, punishment. Rather than that, we are aware that we are working with the responsibility of representing a big brand that is reputed, and it's really important that everyone knows it, puts it in the core of their lives. Therefore, this ethical code is in our DNA. Once we structure our way of functioning on our DNA, we are going to be more efficient. Otherwise, it's not important to put forth sanctions or punishments in the pipeline. It is important to adopt integrity reliability as the main and the core principle. That is really important to serve for reputation. And other than that, for ethical compliance, I think it is really important to be quite transparent, and we are sharing everything with our employees. Also, our control committee is working on the disciplinary investigations. They're just looking into different cases, sometimes corruption, human rights, different functions are involved, of course. Now, reporting as well. Therefore, we are running all the processes within the matter of transparency. May I interrupt? I believe that it is important to provide some means for people to make denunciation. If you want to be involved, of course, it takes courage. You know, the corporate governance, I think, should have the milieu that paves the way for a proper control. Because you're speaking about a big responsibility, and it's not bound to laws in your case. You have something quite bravely just put forth as a line for making denunciations. It's not an easy job for a big company to effectively execute such a practice. And by the way, I have to say that we have the multi-language, facilitation in this line. This is like a hotline, and it's not just working within the company, but extending it to the third parties, including our dealers, because also we are just communicating that we have this line available to everyone. Because once applied properly, you have to make sure that there is really thrust in the eye of the people. And as long as you make sure that the thrust goes on, all the leaks per se can quite well be improved in this way of functioning. So people will have the chance of also confirmation. And I care about this hotline very much. Communicating it properly to everyone, including the third parties, is also important. And our employees are quite transparently informed that we're receiving the data on the hotlines, and we're sharing it with our employees every year. And we are using our joint communication platforms and all platforms, making people updated as to how the system is functioning. So we want to make sure that this platform would improve awareness in the eye of ethics and compliance. I'm very happy to be running this interview with you, because you really say important things. It's not a motto, it's how your company is applying this internally. Hopefully people will be inspired of what you're saying. Let's take one step further then, and let's just say that you've put a good framework for ethics and compliance. And the third party risks, to be able to manage these risks, you should have a good and favorable milieu within the company, which I think will be the main discussion point in this session. Ethical compliance risk. Now, in introduction, you said something that made me think. There is the region that you're in charge of as Coca-Cola Beverage, and just a few days ago, there was the corruption index published by Transparency International, and the countries that you listed, unfortunately, are not the ones that have good ranks in terms of corruption, which I think is really important to increase responsibility of a company. Let's come to third parties, your partners, your business, partners. Who are your third parties? The question is, it's not possible for you to do everything wherever you go, which I think is the biggest rationale for having to work with third parties. And the companies are going to other countries, other geographical places. They're looking for other third parties to run their business quite effectively. Although third parties would give us some advantages, unfortunately, they would have attached risks in the process. My question is, both in Turkey and within the region as broader, what do you do in terms of identifying third-party risks? And how would you decide in the third parties that you're willing to work with in your pipeline? And once you start working with third parties, how would you track? How would you follow your third parties? So in other words, can you give us some idea about how you're applying your third-party program? I can, sure. Thank you, by the way. But what you're saying is really an ongoing process. It's a continuous learning process. When you go to new geographies, you keep learning new things. And when you're not expecting it, you would all at once realize that there are unexpected risks coming up. So the internal risk detection mechanisms are improved all the time. And I think it's really important to be able to do that, to be more proactive. And we're not just stopping there. We get some advisory service from outside. It's really important to stick to integrity. Principle of integrity, we bring it wherever we go because our culture is quite rich, but in our core and practice and philosophy, we share it with everyone that we're basing ourselves with integrity. But saying is not enough. What do we do in practice? First, about big suppliers. Our Coca-Cola system has been functioning for more than 130 years in more than 200 countries. So we have some learnings from there. And there, of course, there is a preliminary knowledge that we have out of this process. And of course, we have this, of course, mechanism for pre-investigation, and after that, looking into main ethics and business management. All our suppliers receive a part of their contract to comply with the ethical principles. We take their word and we highlight the fact that it is a priority for us. This is how it is with the suppliers, but on the other hand, there is a dealer network that we're running. And in all geographies, by 70–80%, we're running our business with the dealers. What does it mean? The dealers represent us. As people are just wearing the Coca-Cola, uniforms out there on the streets, even with the people serving on the streets in the name of Coca-Cola are expected to stick to these principles. Whoever is shaking hands with the people on the street, whoever they're just being dealt with, of course, it would be that person that they will be basing themselves for the reputation of Coca-Cola beverage. So I need to extend my arms and legs there as well, down to that level, to make sure that our principles are adhered to. So dealers are really important priorities for us in this respect. We involve them in all our processes, and in terms of training, in all our dealers meetings, we want to get them involved in the discussions in knowledge sharing about ethics, values, ethics. Compliance managers are all attending the meetings that we're running to update our people about recent developments for compliance, delivering trainings. And it's not enough, because this year we've just started a new project with EBRD, which I think is quite exciting. With EBRD, we are running this project for the medium-scaled enterprises, or the SMEs, so to say, so as to improve their ethical functioning, to contribute to their institutionalization, and to make sure that such principles are introduced into their lives. Some pilot dealers are selected. In this respect, the compliance processes will be designed. Risk management mechanisms will be improved. We've started with sample dealers. Perhaps this is going to be the first step. And after that, the learnings will be handed over to all the dealers under a certification program. And the ethical compliance processes will be supported with the certification program. And our dealers will have the certification. So the ethical compliance processes will be made sure to be taken down to the lowest level in our structure. And this is going to be supported with our projects. Thank you. About third parties, by the way, you have a lot of dealers. And when managing all these dealers, are you making use of your technology? And have you ever had any practice for third parties?
Anlamındaki teknolojiden bahsediyorsanız şu anda benim içerisinde olduğum bilgim dahilinde bir teknoloji kullanımı yok. Ama az önce de bahsettim, sürekli öğreniyoruz. Bu anlamdaki danışmanlıklarımızı da sürekli geliştiriyoruz. Ama eminim şöyle, yani teknoloji kullanımı, eğer böyle bir iletişim platformundan bahsediyorsanız, bu süreç içerisinde aynı nasıl daha önceki toplantılarımızı bu anlamda hani yüz yüze yapıp da
just like we made in our previous meetings, while we were exchanging opinion and information, we are doing remote meetings, online meetings. That's something I can tell. Apart from that, as I mentioned before, ethical reporting line, independent report line or reporting line, actually CCI ethical report line is accessible. They can see it, they can view it. If any irregularity or corruption is found, then they can easily contact us. And that's all I can tell you as an example. Let me add you an example and confirm once again the fact that you are in the right path. International corruption review experts stated that 50 the reports were coming from inside and 50 coming from the outside. So both with responsibility, both with courage, report line should be accessible to all the interested parties. This is important. So report line, people think that this is only accessible by the employees, by the workers. However, accessible to all the stakeholders is very significant. Yes, this is something very effective and we get very good results, benefits from it. We are developing our system in a speedy manner, and I can say that this is one of the best methods. And when you look at its impact, you can see that it can easily be implemented, materialized. However, credibility is very vital, and the right environment is very significant. Creation of the right environment is what is important indeed. I learned a lot from you. I heard very good news from you. You talked about concrete steps and practices. I believe that our participants can make use of your method. So this is the end of our interview by TEID Ethics and Reputation Society. Thank you very much. We always do support such practices and we will continue to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you back. Thank you. Have a good day. Thanks. Thank you very much for the valuable participation. Now, we're starting our panel discussion, 3 country, 3 regulation, third parties. Our facilitator is Fikret Sebilcioğlu, and I would like to invite him also to introduce the panelists. Hello. Hello, everyone. We declare our panel open. I hope that you are having a nice meeting. Well, the panel's name is meaningful. This is 3 countries, 3 regulations, and third parties. Why countries? Because we have high-level management of 3 international companies investing and operating in Turkey. What are these 3 countries? These 3 countries are the ones which are implementing the anti-corruption in the most effective manner: USA, UK, and France. So, in this panel, first of all, I'd like to introduce our panelists: Hakan Türker, Head of External Affairs of BP Turkey. Hello. Kardıçalı, 3M Turkey, Country Leader. Welcome. Fikret, Baltaoğlu, General Manager of Expanscience, Turkey. Welcome. There are 2 Fikrets in our panel, and this is something unique, and I'm very happy and surprised with that. We have 3 sections in this panel, in total 60 minutes, and the last 20 minutes is allocated for Q&A session. So, we have speeches, 20 minutes for speeches. First, we can talk about the environment. What kind of environment should be there to manage third-party risks? And what should we do before and after working with third parties in order to manage the risks? We today are planning to talk about the practices, the practical approaches from our experts. Now I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Hakan Türker. In the first 20 minutes, you can briefly introduce yourself, your company. Well, the companies are very well known, but it's very significant to understand why you are here. And then we can go on with the third-party risks and ethical compliance risks. What kind of environment should be there to manage such risks in a company? What are your experiences and your practices? Thank you very much, Fikret. Well, I followed the panel very ambitiously. I'm very happy to be here, and I find your work very beneficial and very meaningful. I would like to thank TEID team, Ethics and Reputation Society team once again. Let me introduce myself briefly. Before my current office, I was working on finance, sales, logistics for a long time, and I also had experience in China and South Africa abroad. For a specific period of time, I worked in the Northern Europe, whereby I had a chance to know different and learn different cultures. First off, as we all know, development, one of the most important aspects of development is energy. BP, for more than 100 years, both all around the world, both in Turkey, is one of the most important investors combining and connecting people with energy. We are conducting significant works to reduce carbon emission. This is not only at the agenda of environmentalist companies. The governments, NGOs, the business life are all focusing on this subject. As of 2050, or even before that, BP is aiming at becoming a company of zero emission. This is our target, and we shared that target with the world opinion in a transparent manner. I should state that as the staff of BP, consider ourselves very lucky. We are an inspiring and leading a pioneer company. We have clear-cut targets, we have clear-cut roadmaps, and we, as the employees, are participating in engaging in all these works and efforts. Financial, social, and environmental targets, we are working with the target of value adding or adding value to our suppliers, customers, and also BP has turned into a company from a petroleum company to an integrated energy company. So $5 billion target, we are going to be attaining that target. So we are transforming energy. Wind and solar energy are at the forefront. How about petroleum, oil, and gas? Of course, petroleum and oil will be there in our portfolio. However, within time, we think that there will be a reduction. Within the framework of our strategies, digital activities, innovative technologies are going to be supported by us by all means. And in our country, within our global strategies, we are following new business opportunities. So in the future, we will continue our customer-oriented manner. So we are actually continuing work by focusing on customers and customer outcomes and customer satisfaction, integrity, transparency, credibility, and accountability and responsibility principles. We as EP have been working in a consistent manner based on highest standards. And this requires that what we are doing is as important as how we are doing it, and this is one of the most vital aspects of protecting our reputation. Our ethics and compliance program is based on that. So we have an approach where we provide a role model with our leaders, acting with proportionate standards and models. We have such an ethical and ethics and compliance procedure. We are also independent. We use technology as required, support our acts with sufficient workforce, and risk-focused communication programs, which is managed by an independent company, as mentioned in the previous interview. Also, the report line is very important, and continuous reporting and monitoring is important. Ethical codes is based on our code of conduct. Regardless of their position, all workers, suppliers, and partners should abide by these standards and rules. Why is this important for us? It's important because we are engaged in high-risk sectors and regions. Developing technology, social awareness, and expectations are on the rise. And with increased legal sanctions, there are individual sanctions, penalties. So in that framework, our aim is not to provide energy, but also how we provide that energy is at the heart of our company. BP is a UK company, and UK Bribery Act, we rely on BP Bribery Act, and also we're a company quoted in the US stock market. So FCPA and foreign corruption laws are the laws and regulations which we abide by. This should be underlined because we know that regardless of the country, we need to abide by anti-corruption laws and legislations. In 70 countries where we are active, we both follow, observe international and domestic laws. And in the face of laws, legal sanctions, individual public penalties are there. This is something we know. And what we also know, what is very significant, is that reputation is something that you cannot buy with money. So, in high-risk regions, in high-risk sectors, we are engaged. We know that technology has different aspects of currency. There are different expectations, but above all this, how we provide energy to the world, something at the heart of our work. Let me very briefly conclude my words in the first section of that panel. All in all, doing our work at the best manner, adding value to the society in which we live, and we need to and we want to pursue our approach. Thank you very much, Hakan. You also talked about the dimensions from the UK, from the USA, and you also talked about how you abide by international corruption regulations. Now we turn to Fikret Bey, creating an environment to manage the risks. Well, corporate management, ethical culture, and management philosophy. What is your approach towards this? There is compliance with the law on the one hand, and there is the issue of reputation on the other. Goes beyond the laws and the legislations, as mentioned by Tugay previously. What do you think about it? Thank you. First off, I would like to thank Turkish Ethics and Reputation Society, TEID, for such an important panel. I learned a lot from you. Fikret Baltaoğlu, Expanscience Laboratoires, established in 1950, a French family company. Mustela brand, you may know it very well, mother and baby skin products, you may know it, and we also have a portfolio on rheumatology, you may remember us. So, we are operating in 16 countries and we have distributors in more than 100 countries. Expanscience Laboratories, as mentioned by the previous speakers, sustainability journey, well, started more than 15 years ago. Jean-Paul Gartin undersigned personally the UN Global Compact, and then there have been lots of accreditations and certifications following suit. And CSI, actually, we are a model country. In 2016, under the name of Better Living Program, we have extended it to our stakeholders, and in 2017, B Corp certification was awarded. Benefit Corporation, the abbreviation of benefit. So the general slogan is that we are not going to be the best of the world, but provide the best to the world. So B Corp generally is different from the conventional methods. Sustainability. Well, sustainability is mainly cannot go beyond waste management and energy. However, when it comes to B Corp, it involves human rights, non-profit organization, corporations, stakeholder decision mechanisms, and their compatibility, their involvement. So there are different units that are involved under B Corp. So this is about a larger scale sustainability. So from this perspective, ethics reputation and compliance issues are integral parts of it. And what we're trying is to become a company and brands that have an objective and continue our operations accordingly, as mentioned by Hakan previously. What we know it is as important as how we know it. So ethical issues, compliance issues are significant, because if you are not working on the ethical field and if you are not abiding by the law and legislation, then you cannot continue your operations in the long run. That regard, the concepts I have mentioned are taught, explained to our employees, and sometimes we request them to forget some things, to forget what they know, and to learn new things. And at the recruitment phase, we have an important evaluation. We make some assessments and we try to, even at the entry-level positions. So we also continue with a very detailed training system towards our employees. For instance, on Friday, we are going to conduct an annual ethics and compliance program, which involves discussions about some legislations. In France, there's a law legislation called Sapin-2. In 2016, it came into effect in France, which created important changes, modifications. It was there before 2015, and France was a little bit delayed when compared with FCPA in the USA, which was enacted in 1970s. However, after that, when we have a look at the existing responsibilities, we need to attach importance to it, because we also have responsibilities for Turkic republics. And the region which covers Turkey, we also have certain situations there, and there are other peculiarities of the region which we need to focus on. And the reputation issue, as mentioned by Hakan, is very important, because reputation is something interesting. In 2015, 100 years, we earn it. However, we can lose it in 20 minutes, 20 seconds, and we cannot take it back. So this is something we need to cherish. So for our continuity, for our business continuation, significant. This is something very dear. Thank you very much, Fikret. You provided us with some food for thought. Training, education in this regard is something you focus on, which is important and which is an important outcome. Halil Bey, what do you think about this situation? You are representing the USA, you are representing a USA company, and you have the most strict practices under FCPA. What would you like to say? Thank you very much, Fikret Bey. I would like to thank TEİD for organizing such a nice meeting panel, and I wish all of you good health. I've been here for 6 years, and actually I can say that I'm still young, because people work longer in our company than me. Previously, I worked public relations, human resources, and Now I am the country responsible. 3M, let me talk briefly about the company. While we're talking about some risks, we need to understand where we stand. 3M is a Minnesota-based company. 3M Minnesota Mining Manufacturing, the brand name of that. We're an American resident but global company operating in 70 countries, lots of workers, lots of employees. In Turkey, we've been operating for the last 35 years. We have 2 factories, both sales and manufacturing. We are both active in the market, and we are also exporting 3M products. 3M product, actually 3M company, there are 4 business pillars of 3M: industrial and personal protective structures, masks and bandages. We also have electronic and transportation devices, so traffic signs and some different products. We have medical products used by dentists, and at the same time the infection special hospitals. And we also have consumer products, Scotch-Brite, Post-its, so very handy products that we have. But let me state that in the modern world, you can only 3 meters away from any 3M product. So even the chair you are sitting or using the mobile phone you are using, most probably our glue or adhesives were used. You may not realize it, but most probably all of us are using our products of 3M. So we are aiming at adding value and beautifying the lives of our customers. 3M is famous for its innovation. It has more than 120,000 patents all around the world, and we are trying to add value to every walk of life, and we are also acting as a catalyst as well. So with the creation of other new technologies, we contribute a lot, and we are proud and we're very happy with that. Within all these complexity, within all these different business lines, we are managed by a single ethical code all around the world, and we have only one ethical code that we apply to the third parties. Well, 3M is known with its innovation as well as by its adherence to ethical values. Otherwise, we couldn't be a sustainable company which has been active for more than 100 years. In the past 8 years, we rank at the top of the list. Our ethical code is a principle-based one. We want to do what is right just because we believe that it should be done, and we do not tolerate other practices. Although we work on a principle basis, but we need to focus on other code. I call FCPA the Tourist Code, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is about anti-corruption foreign countries. It's a U.S. origin law. It's about tourist law. I call it like because there is the locality of the law which is important. However, FCPA and the ensuing law followed US capital and had its impact in different countries. That's why I call them tourists. They are not only in the USA, but visiting all around the world. But what we are doing is that we work, actually, or we also work on the basis of French, UK, and also in our Turkish criminal code, we have similar provisions. So we try to protect ourselves and implement our code accordingly. Let's talk about the technical part. What does FCPA want from us? Well, the first article states that you should not give bribery, you should keep your records properly, and there is another rule. If you have an intention of corruption, you cannot export it. So you cannot get third parties do make corruption. If you are doing this, then I will hold you responsible for the corruption made by third parties invoked by you. So this is something binding. It should be controlled. And at the same time, all the players should be educated, should be trained. So if I'm to talk about our own ethical code and how this is shaped, the first stage is the undertaking. The employees are a little bit surprised. We have an ethical code which is more comprehensive than the business contract, work contract itself. First of all, we need to make some understandings and explain how we will treat each other. So, and the second aspect is the education, the training program. The third one is the certification and repeating of the trainings. And also talk on the top. We have this principle. Well, talking about ethics, something very natural. So 1 year target, year target, 10-year targets. When we are talking about it, at the top or at the bottom, we need to do everything correctly. We shouldn't make them. So all our managers are also very comfortable talk about that. And how about the middle level? Well, in big companies like us, you can consider it as a country in which there are ministries and undersecretaries and secretaries. So at the top and at every level, manager, the director, report what is right and what is correct. So we love talking about ethics, compliance. It's there at our business plans. Sometimes it's at the end, sometimes it's at the beginning. It's always there. It's talked, considered, and reputation management is something about sustainability. And 3M has sustainable goals. We want to become carbon neutral company, and we want to actually, we have some goals and objectives and continuation of the brand and adding value to life. These aspirations are very well known, and in this sense, ethics management and reputation is very dear to us, very significant to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful startup. Actually, the third-party risks and the risks relating to anti-corruption are quite important. Therefore, the introductory remarks are quite important. Halil, what really makes sense is to pick the right thing because it's the right thing. I think it's really the good cap for what we're speaking. Now, let's move on to the second part of the discussion. Before we start with a business partner, a third party, like me, I'd like to work with BP, and I'd like to start off with this question. I'm willing to work with BP. What do you do? What kind of processes do you follow to see who I am? Do you think I'm eligible to work with you?
Söyleyebilir miyim? Ben
Yes, you are. You're kindly invited always.
söyleyebilirim.
Thank you very much.
Her zaman.
Now, what you say is really an important part of our discussion. Let's now start with a definition of the third party. Why we say the third party matters. We have all the persons, individuals, companies that will mediate our activities in different regions, such as the agencies, consultants, logistics partners, contractors, and suppliers. And of course, the list can go on and on. Before the companies get in a blacklist, for a short list, we need to make a proper assessment of the situation about their condition. And actual contract conditions should consider these aspects. All the principal policies must be made sure that they are known to these third parties. Governance is extremely important because speaking of our administrative, for instance, governance, we have the code of conduct, which I think is relevant. To make proper and right decisions, we need to make sure that the people we're working with and our employees follow the principles that are laid down by the company on a global scale. Therefore, there are some codes of conduct that must be followed by everyone without any exception. Financial eligibility or authorization. In this authorization, how the authority transfer or delegation of authority is done in the company, it is being defined quite clearly from top to bottom. And another important thing that I think quite makes sense is both the employees and the third parties and the people who will also be undertaking activities in line with the third parties will be obliged to have a face-to-face or either online trainings, which is relevant for today's conditions. Compliance with the legislation, environment and labor health, corruption, anti-corruption, money laundering, international trade regulations, competition law and related practices, cybersecurity, data safety, conflicts of interest, so on and so forth, will be the topics of this training that will be extended to all. 8 or 10 chapters, I think, will be provided to these people in this training modules. BP employees, us, so as to make our job properly, must have all the necessary instrumentation and equipment to do our jobs properly, and all systems that will make that possible will need to be furnished properly. In the first part that we've discussed, we drew a frame for the BP ethics and compliance culture, and it's really can only be possible through this practice that all of our partners and employees have a good understanding of our rules and our principles. As much as other rules, the people also matter because they will be the ones to follow the rules. As about the individuals and the parties or institutions we're working with, what do we do? Actually, once we get in contact with them, based on the information they provide to us and the documentation they submit, we run some investigation and take opinion from different departments such as the procurement, compliance, or the sales. The relevant departments are being asked about their opinion before we start working with a third party. If necessary, we also get in consultation with our offices abroad. Therefore, this is how we define our business partners in more than 70 countries in terms of having access to energy resources, managing energy, providing logistics for energy. We need to run different aspects of our business, which I have to say is quite risky and complex. Therefore, the supplier, advisor, dealer, undertakers, subcontractors, these all will have to be worked with because there are tens of different third parties that will be engaged with us. As you said, there are risks attached to it, which are not to be underestimated. According to research conducted last year, third-party related bribery and corruption constitutes 40% of general compliance risks, which is quite high. And in arranging our business with third parties, we're running very comprehensive programs, which we must. And as I said, the British Anti-Corruption Act, which has an Overseas Act, and the United States Anti-Corruption Acts are the ones that we are subject to. Considering that, we need to reflect high international standards for the third-party risk management program, which is inevitable for us, because in accordance with these laws, corruption and bribery, although run by a third party, would engage the main company for not having taken the necessary measures. Geography, business volume, so on forth are the items that would make us do different types of categorization so that the third parties will be listed down according to their risk levels. I mean, this may rank from simple, risky companies to high-risk companies or sectors. And as a result of this investigation, and based on all the documentation that I've explained, we make a scoring for all the third parties. But what really makes sense there, according to what do we run this? For instance, the structure of shareholder and the regional risk, industrial risk, potential conflicts of interest, relations with the public, economic sanctions, presence of subcontractors, so on and so forth will be the factors that we'll have to consider in evaluating the risks of the third party. If, as a result of our assessment, we point to a high risk, the decision of either working with the relevant third party or not will be put on the table with the relevant management, and if there is a certain requirement for working with this particular company, we get into a more detailed investigation and start working with the company by taking high-level measures. And there are some rejection points as well. The contracts that we execute also cover bribery and corruption. Depending on the risk score of the company and the industry that the company is representing, we consult with the legal department and we prepare the relevant contract. Also, the contracts also seek some rights for proper management. Ethical rules are always made a part of the contract. Denunciation is extremely important, and the channels for notifying any potential violations will be also declared to the third party within the contract. Another thing that is important for us in the contract is to provide a detailed payment scheme. Performance criteria also is really relevant. This should always be there, and the performance criteria would be following ethics and compliance as well. Suspension and the right to abolish, compensation of damage, data security and confidentiality will be included in the contracts as a standard format. If within the scope of the services that the third parties provide to us, I mean, if this contractor further uses a subcontractor, of course, then comes in play the need for a more detailed investigation. And within the contracts, there is a requirement for trainings, how the subcontractors will benefit from the trainings. And in the end, whatever we do, we always repeat this procedure for high-risk parties. For the last 5 minutes or so, I keep speaking about the requirements of BP from other parties, but one note to bring up here is we do not consider this relation with the third parties as a unilateral relationship. There is no such thing as our company keeps on demanding things from the third companies. It is a priority for us, of course, to work in collaboration with the third parties for ethics and compliance. Considering and respecting their rights, we make sure that a proper relationship will be run in the long term. What else do we do? Ethics and compliance policies and principles will need to be internalized. Therefore, we seek people who have internalized such principles being in the position of applying those principles properly. Therefore, that we have third parties as such. Quite naturally, we have a closer way of working and cooperating with these companies in a longer duration, because it is important for us to have people having adopted our principles, particularly in the long run. And it's our preference that we can continue any collaboration in the long term. Ethics and compliance, I think, should be considered as a business investment, which would be benefited both by us and by the third parties, because we think that there is a huge social interest into that. Geographically, there will always be some reflections, implications on the society we're living in. Thank you very much. As you said, corporate social responsibility is the point of the ultimate discussion. And what we understand as this discussion is for the sake of the third party, it's really important to go through this scrutinized procedure. I think it's important that people take note of that. Fikret, what would you say before working with your partners? What kind of procedures do you run? As I said before, purpose-driven management is another maybe item to be discussed, because the first and only pharmaceutical and cosmetic company and the first international company in Turkey being certified in this respect will give us some responsibility. Of course, it's good, but on the other hand, it's a burden on our shoulders. As I said, we at the same time are willing to respect our stakeholders within our own environment and everyone and every structure within our impact zone. And thanks to the power of trade, we're willing to do some good for our planet, and some utopic even goals are being chased by us to make the world a better place for everyone. Therefore, last year, Carbon Net Zero 2030 agreement we have ratified last year, which I think really brings along quite pushy targets. But on the other hand, when picking our suppliers, there are some certification requirements that we want to follow when choosing our suppliers, our third parties. As much as possible, we want to work with third parties who will not engage subcontractors in the process. There is, of course, a priority for the local economy. And in this respect, we always say we're running operations in this country, therefore we have some responsibilities for this country. Therefore, we do not oblige anyone. Yeah, there are obligations attached in some aspects because, we have a very demanding supplier agreement on one hand, but on the other hand, we say there are some certifications so and so. And let's give you some training about that. Let's mediate your contact with international agencies. Maybe with some of them, you will be in the position of undertaking some of the costs. Of course, this may sometimes irritate people. And they say, what do you mean? If we do not own these certificates, will you not be working with us in the future? Not right now, but maybe in the future. Yes, we don't know, because it may be the case in the future, because it doesn't happen overnight. There is some time that we're allocating to our, our partners, our stakeholders. These are the things that would take time, but at the end of the day, what we are willing is to make sure sustainability of our own operation with our stakeholders. And we believe that we're obliged to do that with our stakeholders, which I think is not arbitrary for us, because we're always aspiring for a long-term relationship. We have 35, 40 years of distributors that we are working with, which is not the rare case for us. The same for our employees, the same for our consumers, so to speak. So at the end of the day, professionally speaking, we think it should be a priority to consider ethics as the basis of professional priorities, because if we want to have a good ethical approach and build a professional sound functioning, you have to make sure that the foundation is quite sound, because otherwise, even in a small shake, you would lose everything. Doesn't matter how long you have strived, doesn't matter how much you've invested. Maybe the operations are continuing, but your stakeholders that you're working with may have lost reputation. And some legal problems may have arisen about these stakeholders, because at the end of the day, you need these stakeholders. In the long run, you have a responsibility for evolving your stakeholders. Of course, on one hand, we should be protecting each other. We have the legal obligations, personal and corporate as well. And today, as all the panelists would agree with me, we undertake some responsibilities and liabilities about all the acts of the third parties that we're working with, since we might be even imprisoned with their improper or illegal actions, and we might be losing some of our personal wealth, which I have to say that can be dissuasive for everyone at the management level. And all of the countries should be considering this, and it's important to consider that maybe once we do all of this, we need to have some carrot. Of course, the stick is okay, but we also need to have some carrot. And with this approach, it is important to inform everyone properly, and we have the responsibility of proper information to everyone. In this respect, when we start working with third parties, of course, the reputation, history, financials must be measured properly by the system. But in general, our business partners that we always start working, they tell us, what is your expectations from us? I mean, they ask us the question, what do you expect from us? But mostly it's the financial question. And they want to learn things financially. The first thing we say is, by the end of the first year, you will have said that, thank God we have started working with you. So it's important to make each party say that, thank God we've started working. So each party should be satisfied with each other, so that this relationship should be a long-running and long-term relationship. And all the efforts being spent should not be wasted. Therefore, every party should be meticulous in the way that they're behaving in this respect. They say, I'm not as rich as investing in the short run. I think this one is quite like this approach. I don't know if this has become an answer to you.
Çok güzel bir cevap oldu. İçinde de duymak istediğim çok güzel konulara değindiniz. Yani bunlar keyfi şeyler değil dediniz. O çok hoşuma gitti. Oturduğumuz yerde sorumluluklarımızı bilerek oturmamız gerekiyor. Bence harika mesaj verdiniz. sizlerle çalışmak sanki bu coğrafyada ilk düşünüldüğünde şöyle etik kültürü, çalışma kültürü öyle kolay da değil. Ancak çalışıldığı zaman da her zaman iş ortağınızı yukarıya çekecek, her zaman daha iyiye götürecek bir yolculuk sunuyorsunuz. Nedenle çok güzel bir bölüm oldu. Şimdi son bölümü yapacağız ama zaman kısıtımız çok ciddi. Çünkü sorular da var. Birkaç soruyu da cevaplamak istiyorum katılımcılardan gelen. O nedenle sizlerden ricam, artık iş ortağıyla çalışmaya başladık. Mutluyuz. Sözleşmeyi de imzaladık.
Yes, we start with our partners. We made our contract. We give product. And what do you do after that with the third parties? We can start with Hakan and continue. You have 2 minutes so that we have time for questions and answers. Hakan, please. Time is very limited. I will try my best, but let's see. Well, very quickly, I should say that top management of the company should the management, attitude of the leaders, and being a pioneer, a lead for all the employees, and employers' direct involvement in decision-making process are significant. Let me give you some examples. Gifting and accommodation or hospitality issues. Leaders should be recording them, registering the gifts or accommodation or hospitality expenses, and conflict of interest. When they are on the agenda or when they emerge, the managers should lead, and the employees and the third parties should also learn from them. The conflict of interest is very significant. Sometimes this is done due to performance or due to pressure, but sometimes this is done knowingly and willingly. So there's a need for a thorough evaluation, trainings, while planning our trainings, we take into account the different conditions, the changing conditions, the changing situations, and working with high-risk parties, both at the desk and both on-site visits are there for auditing them, for checking them, also following them, monitoring and auditing them, with talking with the workers on the site, and separation of duties. We have a program based on this. We have such a financial program where we can see the risks and we can raise red flags after certain stages. Frequently on a regional basis or during some periods we get together with the suppliers, we listen to their challenges, problems. So the third parties, we want them to share things with us. Reporting and denunciation are very important. So reporting mechanism is very significant both for our workers, for third parties. And one of the panelists also mentions that it can be in any language, easy to access, easy to approach. And more importantly, retaliation. We have zero tolerance towards retaliation. So when an employee is identified, when a reporter or when someone who reports actually submits himself, then we have no retaliation against him or her. Our partners, we want our partners to adopt our principles and rules so that we can work on the long term. So both for BP, both for our partners, this is the biggest gain, I believe. But my time is up. Thank you very much. Fikret, what do you do after working with third parties? Are in close cooperation with all our customers.
Çünkü bir sene boyunca hiç uğramadığınız
Because
bir tedarikçinizin gidip
a
deposuna
supplier which you haven't visited for a year, when you want to audit it or control the warehouse after a year or after a very long time, yes, you can learn some things, some aspects. However,
hani döner ekmek yiyerekten de zaten o depo içerisinde bir takım şeyler olmuş mudur ve bunu belki de her ay, belki de 2 ayda bir
know or learn what's going on in the warehouse by sharing food with them or visiting. So whenever we visit them, whenever a high level, a high management visits them, we know that these are planned, informed visits. The time is known, the person is known. So we call them as red carpet operations because everything is known beforehand. But if you train your team very well, and if you know the short, mid, and long-term results, outcomes, the benefits, and if you like them, if you have a responsibility-driven approach, then that team can visit that warehouse every week. And if an irregularity is there, then they can easily be cognizant of what is going on. Hakan gave a very detailed examples. Training was one of them. I want to accentuate training, especially both our own personnel, our staff, and the staff of our partners. We have a responsibility of training, and the rest, auditing aspects, practice, are the routine ones. However, extra trainings are very important for awareness raising. They can take time, they can be long. For some issues, you need to work for 5 years to make a change. But when you move the stone with some force, it still gives us a good level of motivation. Thank you very much. Halil, the same question. The ongoing risk is there. There is a living risk. When you are shaking hands, well, we need to consider these aspects. Compliance management is also significant. This is not limited to general director and others, but we are in the same team, so our partners are in the same team with us, so we remind them of their own responsibilities. Training is very important, as mentioned by the previous speakers, continuous communication and warnings, collective warnings, or corrective behaviors, monitoring and reporting mechanisms, and if necessary, auditing and evaluation can be there. Let me underline some of them. For monitoring and reporting, we say speak up. Don't be shy and speak up. This is open for our partners as well. It's like a reporting line, and you can also say in your opinion. So we also take some action vis-a-vis the feedbacks we have received. So this is a teamwork, both for the products of 3M, both for protecting our business. So we undertake that we will provide support if our partners abide by this. We also warn our employees to be vigilant, to be cognizant, because you are the ones who can see best what is going on. So whenever there is a need, they need to raise the red flag. And in addition, We love a lot talking about compliance, and our distributors and our partners are accustomed to it, and they grew their business. So with such structures, with such practices, when done willingly and knowingly, I believe will bring the companies to a further level, both from the commercial aspects, both from ethical aspects. They provide contributions. So this is the result of a long-term process, not a short-term one. So this is how we manage or try to manage when we are interacting with our third parties. Now I'm going to share with you some questions and hear your answers. In the developing countries, Turkey is involved as well. In terms of business ethics of third parties, which are the most resisted issues, or in which issues you received the most significant resistance? Fikret, maybe we can start with you because you are also working in Eastern countries. Maybe they may be a bit more challenging. Halil talked about culture, geography. So some cultural requirements for us. Well, when the geography moves western, these requirements cannot be understood very well. For instance, it's like gifting gold coins. When a baby is born or when someone is marrying off, you need to gift them a golden coin. This is a cultural thing. So you have to be there, you have to be present, and when you are present, you have to provide them with a gift. For instance, you are drinking coffee or tea with them, and you cannot immediately leave the environment or leave that place. And sometimes our Western partners or our foreign partners may have difficulty in understanding this. So some of our peers cannot get it correctly. So from the outside, is it related to ethical issues, compliance issues? They may seem wrong on the paper, but in essence, and on the other hand, well, now I should say that a gold coin costs a lot now, and well, this is even higher than the amounts, the prices that can be paid by the customers. So culture and geography, cultural and geographical aspects and issues are there, and there are some challenges or adaptation problems, I believe, because in terms of culture, our geography requires certain different aspects. For instance, in Turkey publics or Russia, if you are doing business with them, there are some cultural rules, like you need to go to dinner with them, and sometimes if you say that I'm not taking alcohol or I'm not taking alcoholic beverages, this can be understood differently. So there are these cultural differences. On the other hand, you have a business partner and you shared, or actually you may be going out to meal or to dinner with them, and it may raise some question marks. I believe that there can be a problem in cultural adaptation. Thank you. Would you like to add anything? Let me add something. I think the difficulty lies with the reflex that we are trying to cover up the mistakes, the wrongdoings. However, the reality will be surfaced at the end. So in such circumstances, especially what we are trying to do, or what we are trying to encourage is to try to solve the problem altogether. If there is a problem, if there is a wrongdoing, let's talk about it and let's try to devise a solution, because if this is covered up, if this is hidden, then it's guaranteed that it will cause problems. But if we identify the problem, the wrongdoing, then with cooperation, sometimes stakeholders may overlook that, and sometimes they just try to be silent, but we say that don't keep silent, speak up so that we can solve it together. Let me tell you something. Our geography, in our geography, performance success, the cultural performance or success is very high. And there are lots of examples. Lots of them are the good examples, but sometimes we have bad ones as well. While working with third parties, performance is very significant. We want to do our work, our job, but we want to do it properly. No matter what, we actually attach importance to doing it right, and time to time in terms of how to do our job. And a failure of performance may create pressure, or third parties think that there is such a pressure, but we talk to them frequently about performance. This is not about doing something, but doing it in the best manner, doing it properly while working with third parties. A very hot topic, COVID-19. In terms of ethical compliance risks with third parties, has COVID-19 brought new risks, or are there any sectors at the forefront? You have 1 minute.
Yani tabii şimdi birlikte iş yaptığımız iş ortaklarımızın
COVID-19
ilgili önlemleri alıp almadığı, buna uygun,
whether they take COVID-19 measures or not, whether they shape their work accordingly or not,
buna uygun ortamlar hazırlayıp buna uygun,
whether they create enabling environments for their employee or not, is something else. This is a mutual relationship. When we pay visit to their offices and when they come to us to visit us in our offices, well, we are trying with through online medium, but there are other aspects as well. If your third party partner receive short-term employment benefit, salary, or sending their personnel to unpaid leave, if they choose this way, this method, then there is another risk, because together with that personnel, you are conducting business, and that business may be hampered. As a result, maybe this is not related to ethical issues or not. Maybe this is a risk brought directly by COVID-19. But if from the ethical perspective, this is chosen, then you cannot exert a pressure from ethical perspective, because this is a legal and a commercial choice. Thank you. Would you like to add anything? Very briefly, let me tell you. Within the scope of COVID-19, the main principle is that in our country, well, under COVID-19, the risks we have faced in the company are there in the third parties, even they have more risks. So this is the main, and based on this main principle, working together, working closely, the measures we take are shared by other companies, other partners, and if they want to take the same measures, we do our best to support them. It is something good for us because we work together with them. We share the same offices, or we share the same facilities most of the times. And for the companies, for the people we work together, living, working with them with the same measures, based on the same measures, we believe is the right thing to do. Would you like to add anything? During COVID-19, our priority is the safety, the health of our employees and our partners. Well, my colleagues said everything, but times like these, crisis times like these, there are risks regarding conflict of interest, or some practices just to save the day are on the rise, unfortunately. Thank you very much. There are a few more questions, but our time is up. We're 5 minutes late. Thank you very much, Hakan Türker. Thank you very much, Hakan Kardıçalı, for your participation. Fikret, Baltaoğlu, again, I would like to thank all of you, the institutions, for your support to Turkish Ethics and Reputation Society, for sharing best practices with us. When we talk about third party, I always remember that. Tell me who your friend is so that I can tell you who you are. This proverb is there for me always as important. I wish you to work with sincere partners just like yourselves. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much for your participation.
Dijital geleceğin etik tasarımı temasıyla konuşacağımız birbirinden değerli konuklarımızla beraber olacağız.
Next week on Wednesday, we will be speaking about ethics by design and digital future. Have a nice night.